This is North Texas Weather Center with your latest forecast for the severe weather potential in the Panhandle of Texas, Kansas, and as well as Oklahoma going into tomorrow. Now, when you watch this forecast, it might be the day of. I'm recording this on Thursday night, so this event is happening on Friday, just for your reference. Now, we're going to take a look at everything that you know in this forecast, and in terms of what to expect in the Panhandle of Texas, Oklahoma, as well as Kansas, and as well as what we're expecting maybe in North Texas heading into Sunday with that potential for maybe some severe storms later in this forecast. Let's take a look at the jet stream. You can see it back off to the west. There is a negatively tilted trough, which is honestly a pretty good setup for severe weather, and this will eventually move east, and that will eventually bring that potential for maybe some severe storms. And you can see that red area lining up pretty closely at Panhandle, Texas. That's where we'll start to see that development for some severe weather on Friday night. So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, for that potential for severe weather, that's the area that we're watching fairly closely, with the upper levels rotating a bit more closer to the surface. We'll see that rotation as well. More on that in just a second on the lower level jet. Take a look at the severe weather potential for tomorrow. There's an enhanced risk of severe storms. This is obviously a very big area. I'm only covering the southern portion of this area, so that would include, again, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. But enhanced risk does exist going all the way from Nebraska down to the Panhandle of Texas. A marginal risk extends all the way up closer to Minnesota. So this is a very large area that we're watching tomorrow, but we'll primarily be focusing on just this area in the forecast where I'm looking at right now. So again, Kansas, Oklahoma, and portions of the Oklahoma Panhandle as well will be seeing that potential for some severe weather later on during the day Friday. So this will be, again, an area to watch very closely. Hail threat, as you can see, there's a hatched area, which does represent, again, the potential for maybe some very large hail, anywhere from baseball sized, potentially tennis ball sized hail out of a couple of storms, obviously, and that hatched area will have that best potential for that. Take a look at the tornado outlooks. There's a 5% chance in a 25-mile radius, so there might be a tornado or two. These will be discrete supercells, so that's why we're watching that potential for maybe a tornado or two out of a couple of those storms that do develop. Look at the instability. I mean, we're looking at a massive amount of instability when it comes to these storms going into around about 5-6 o'clock. You can see the instability values reach as high as 3,000 joules per kilogram, which instability is really what you need for thunderstorms to develop, which this is plenty for storms to develop at this point. So we're watching a very large amount of instability, without a doubt, out to the west and western portions of the Panhandle, eventually moving into the Panhandle of Texas. Let's take a look at the tornado parameter. Now, what's the tornado parameter really show us? Well, it shows us that potential for if a tornado will develop. Now, usually any numbers below 1, which is usually light gray, it's really hard to see. You can kind of see it here. Those numbers will usually represent that really low end potential for a tornado. Now, anything from 1 to 2 is like a low to maybe moderate end threat, so maybe a 5% probability. Anything above 2 and maybe 3 possibly means a pretty significant tornado threat. So that's why we're kind of looking at this tool to be able to identify, will there be a tornado threat? So this is just looking purely off of what we'll see late Friday night, and you can see values between 1 to 2 along that initiator area, which would be right around that cold front. See, those values are right between 1 to 2, as high as 3. So there's a potential, again, for tornadoes, which getting closer to 3, again, is getting close to that significant chance for a tornado or 2. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. It kind of should give you a probability of where you could see tornadoes, and if those values really stay pretty high, even through Kansas, up between 2 to 3. So it's definitely a pretty good value there. Obviously, that value goes down overnight, which is pretty typical with these kind of situations. Usually nighttime threats are pretty low, especially going closer to like 5-6 in the morning. Or really, that's when you don't really see a whole lot of severe weather. All right, here's a look at the low level jet. I was going to show this earlier, but we're going to show it now. This is an idea of where that low level rotation is the strongest, and you really can see those yellows are going to represent your strongest area, but this is really where you're looking for that potential. Again, for that low level jet is going to be the strongest in this area. This would be right about when the storms are ongoing, so probably closer to about 11-12 o'clock, maybe as late as then, but probably from about 8 to 12 or so would probably be your best chance for some of these storms. You can see the knots with this is anywhere from 65-70 knots in the lower levels. That is really strong rotation at this point that we're looking at in those areas in the Panhandle of Texas, western Oklahoma, as well as southwestern Kansas. So very strong low level jet to definitely bring potential for a couple of tornadoes, without a doubt. Look at the dew points, by the way. The humidity is not going to be actually that high with these storms. I mean, we're looking at humidity values between 55 to possibly 60. This is not impressive by any means, but it is enough to have thunderstorm development, which again is why we could see some severe storms. You can see like Dalhart right here is only 20, so it's a big difference there. That here's your cold front or dry line. I mean, it's a big difference across the board there, but the dew points aren't really that high. I mean, for this kind of time of the year, we're not really seeing high dew points with that potential for severe weather. All right, let's get into the timing of everything, because obviously this is what you're probably waiting for. Let's go through the day Friday. So we'll stay dry all across Oklahoma and Texas throughout most of the day. I mean, we won't see anything until probably at least 6, 7 o'clock. This is by 8 o'clock. You can see these storms really erupt at the absolute peak, basically, of daylight heating is right around 6 o'clock or so. It's just happening just after that. So the cap weaken's just enough. The storms start to get initiated from Amarillo and off to the north. Eventually, by about 9 o'clock, you can see storms move off to the northeast. Now, how long will these storms last is a big question mark. It does not look to be that long. That's why that outlook area for that slight risk and enhanced risk is just so small and so skinny, because these storms aren't going to really go that far. They're only going to live probably 2 to 3 hours at the most. By 10 o'clock, you already see they're starting to fizzle out as they enter western Oklahoma. By 11, they might be gone. So I'm just saying, I mean, these storms are not going to be very long lasting. It doesn't look like. It looks like it basically will be a pretty strong cap, it looks like, out in front of those storms once they continue to push off to the west. Let's just take a look at this one more time, kind of give you an idea. Probably some strong updrafts and downdrafts at first, but then those updrafts probably start to weaken as it moves off to the east as well, which would probably get undercut by that cap again, back off to the east. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind. Now, if you want to know more about what the cap is and what it has to do with weather, go ahead and take a look at the card at the top of your screen and check that out. That's our tutorial video on how to identify what a cap is. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel. This forecast is brought to you by Platinum Contracting, Birdie's Port Turf, and All Dents Repair.